Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. How's everybody doing today? What's up? What's up?
What's going on? Caps are sliding.
Caps are sliding out of nowhere. They had greatest weekend ever after the Four Nations thing, and then they played two also rans in the middle of at home, and they stink against both of them. I don't know. Hockey's a weird sport. Like you can't predict it day to day, let alone like week to week, month to month. You can't do it. It's impossible.
I'm sure you want to talk about more later, but the simple thing, and even Carberry mentioned it yesterday, was they're playing desperate teams now, and they're the best team in the league. That's a recipe for you're getting everyone's top effort on top of their top effort, and if you're not at the top of your game, you're not ready for it. Is essentially what he said.
I like good teams beat bad teams at home. That's where I'm at on that. But all right, we'll get around to that stuff. All right, let's start with the football stuff, which is Myles Garrett is serious. He is serious. The reporting is that the Browns did approach him, wanted to find out, is this really just about money? He's got 2 years left on the deal that he signed in 2020, which is vastly underpays him now compared to what the market is. There was no guaranteed money, not unlike John Allen's contract. There was no guaranteed money. Not that they want to trade him or get rid of him, but like there was no guaranteed money left. So he wants assurances. That would make sense if I'm him. So I guess they wanted to find out how serious is this threat that you want to go. Let's throw some money in front of you and see if that changes your mind. And the reporting is it hasn't, and that his agents refused to speak to them about an extension. They want a deal. Now, if they were to get a trade, they are going to have to work with the Browns with cap relief. So, but that's when that ball starts rolling that way. And I don't know. Do I believe it? I do. I think I do. I think if they've gotten ahead of this and they've said, we don't want this lingering over us for the whole offseason, whether it's before the draft or after the draft, we don't want it lingering. We just want to get this over with. We said we want you here. We're serious about it. We'll pay you like the top paid player at your position, which will be probably the highest contract for any defensive player in the history of the NFL, probably. And he's balking at that. Then he's serious. He wants to go somewhere else. So let's see where this goes, guys.
This is also the next phase of their negotiations. As you just mentioned, they're going to have to work the contract out with Cleveland at some point. This is them going, we don't want to talk to you. Give us the old, the phrase of the week has been, so-and-so has been granted permission to seek a trade. That's what they want. And so that way Garrett can start talking to other teams about what that deal looks like too, because it's going to take three parties here. It's going to take Garrett. It's going to take the Browns. It's going to take whatever team wants to trade for him. And then they also have to work out whatever that compensation looks like for the actual trade. This is just the next phase of going, move out of the line, please. We don't want to talk to you. We'll talk to you when we need to, is essentially what this one has turned into.
Money part's could be the easiest part. Whoever is serious about signing him knows they have to make him the highest paid player on defense in the history of the NFL. So only the teams that are serious about that will engage with him in the first place. That might be here. That probably is Philadelphia, because they've said if it's going this direction, they want to step in front of it. At least that's what the reporting was. And I believe that like they do not want him going to one specific place, albeit I wouldn't be too psyched if he went to Detroit either, if I'm Philadelphia or Washington for that matter. I don't want him going there either, or I don't want him somehow ending up in San Francisco, which I can't imagine they would be able to pull off. But I wouldn't want that. I mean, there's plenty of NFC teams I don't want to see him on if he's going to be moved. Philadelphia and Detroit are at the top of the list, though. So when Philadelphia says they don't want him coming here, I think they should mean Detroit, too, because I don't think they need their defense getting obviously it'll get healthier. They don't need Hutchinson and Garrett anchoring that side of that line. Nobody needs that going into next year. Anyway, I think the money part's easy. That whoever actually would engage in a trade talk for him is willing to do that. That's like a prerequisite to even have the conversation. We are willing to make you happy financially, and that means a very large contract. The other part is, what do the Browns want? And what's the starting point, asking point? And I'm going with its 2 first-round picks. And I don't know that for sure, but that'd be my guess, because I'd aim at that level just to start with, because if the reporting is already out there that if one team gets in line, that another team will make sure that it doesn't happen, then you might as well set the bar extremely high. That's at least 2 first-round picks. And this is where I have a hard time buying us doing that. I don't know that we're even in that conversation. And I don't want to speak for our front office, but just go listen to what they said earlier this week, which was very much in line with what they've said all along, which is we value building through the draft. And, Peters, he took a question from Sam 48. It was funny. And he was like, do you have, the necessary things to make a trade? Wink, wink, wink. What if Myles Garrett was actually available? And Peters, who's gotten a little more coy with the media, remember, he was very guarded, he just looked at Sam and he goes, who would that be for, Sam? Like that, like jokes with him, like knows what we're on the same page here. We're not going to pretend we don't know what we're talking about. And he brushed it off to a point where I think he's supposed to, but he brushed it off to a point that made me feel like it just isn't now. Like, it's just not happening. If there was a Myles Garrett wants to come here and doesn't want to go anywhere else, NBA style situation, where he goes, listen, not only do I want to be traded, there's a very specific place I want to be traded to, make it work out. It would then be up to Cleveland to decide whether they'd accommodate him. I haven't heard that from him. I haven't heard that from any NFL player, but I haven't heard that from him. All I've heard from him is, I want to go to a place where I can win a Super Bowl. Well, there's a number of places you could look at and think you could win a Super Bowl. Hopefully he thinks this is one of them too, but it's not the only one for sure. So that's why I said the other day, if this is going to spiral down the direction that we want it to, which is he's not only available, but he's willing to come here, and this team has the wherewithal to potentially pull this off, he's going to have to say he wants to come here. And what I haven't heard from him through all the things that he has said is exactly where he wants to go. All he's been is vague about it, saying, I just want to go somewhere where I can win. Well, that would be Philadelphia. They just won. That would be Kansas City. They've been in the Super Bowl a million times. That's Buffalo. That's Baltimore. That's, hopefully he sees us that way. That's Detroit. That's San Francisco. There's a lot of options if you just say, I want to play for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was going to say he didn't deny it is what I was going to say with us. Like, I think it was Rich Eisen that asked him during, Radio Row on Super Bowl week, where he was like, yeah, I think I could help them out or something like that. It was a very casual comment, but it wasn't this like adamant, yeah, I want to go play with Jaden Daniels. That's the place I want to go. And he didn't mention anywhere else. Yeah, that's the only way I would see it happening here. I've landed on this for the last 2 to 3 weeks. They just have too many holes, and I don't think they can put so much into one player with just how the roster is still in shambles at this point. Jaden Daniels makes you that much better, but you need to field a team, and going to get Myles Garrett might be amazing. They might be able to pull it off, but I think they would be put in a bad spot, not just for the depth of this year, for the next couple of years. Like I started to go down the road with you yesterday about how bad the draft was 2 drafts ago. There's basically no players left from the draft that it was so bad. They're having to constantly fill their team out because they don't even have backups that are on rookie contracts at this point. This is just bad timing. I think we've kind of hit it on the head here. If this was happening next year or 2 years from now, I think they'd be all in. But as of right now, the way the roster looks, I just don't see it happening.
No. And then when you listen closely to what Peter said, I think it's important. Like, every time everyone, and I've been talking about this for a while, every time everyone talks about cap space and they see this number that Washington has, they've got this cap space. It's an illusion a little bit. They do have room to maneuver. They can sign players. They could take a couple of big swings if they wanted to. Like, they could get Myles Garrett, at least contractually. They could get T. Higgins. Yes, they could do that. But realistically, they don't have this number that you think they have because half their roster isn't filled out right now. That cap room accounts for, they only have like 24 players signed. So there's a lot of this number that isn't real. And then Peter said this the other day, and I think a lot of people are starting to say this. I think they're trying to change the narrative about what cap room actually means. You're on a cash budget of what you can actually spend that the owners are willing to front load to you. Philadelphia in recent years has been willing to spend a lot of money up front, kick the can down the road. It's helped that they've drafted really well. It's the magic secret to, if you want to be really good for a period of time, you've got to spend a lot of money up front to spread it out. You pay the price to build a team, but at the same time, if you don't draft well, it will burn you fast, right? They've done both of them. They've spent a lot of money on Saquon, A.J. Brown. They had to pay Hurts. He's their quarterback. Devontae Smith, they paid. They paid a lot of these offensive linemen. They put a lot of this money up front. They did it specifically with Lane Johnson. They paid him a ton of money, like right up front. So that's a big check that Jeffrey Lurie has to say he's willing to just give them. And then at the same time, the back end of the roster has high-end draft picks. This is why they are where they are. Washington's not in that spot. They don't have a full roster yet. They drafted really well a year ago, but that's the first that they've had in a while. That's been a really good overall draft. They need one or two more of them. And then secondarily, what we don't know, and I do believe that this ownership is willing to spend, but we don't know what that quote unquote cash budget is off of the cap room. So you can't think about cap room as it's, you can do whatever you want with this. It's whatever the budget is. And this is why, like, I think the Bengals stuff's going to end weird because we know that this owner, whatever his cash budget is not what's going to be required to get Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson all signed at the same time. It's Lerner-ish. Like, we knew when two huge contracts popped up, there was no chance that Rizzo was going to be allowed to sign both of them. It's not blank checks. That's the NFL these days. And I like that Peter said it, where he goes, there's like some misinformation about the way you guys talk about cap room. Yes, we do have this if you account for half our team isn't signed. And secondarily, the part you don't know is the conversation I've had with Josh Harris about what we're willing to allocate up front to players. And I believe that we're not a cheap franchise or anything like that, but there is a limit. You can't just do anything. It's not carte blanche.
There's also, I think a lot of people, I mean, we haven't been like this competitive, obviously, in a long time. I think people forget, too, that whatever cap money you save does roll over a little bit year to year. It's not an insane number, but you get a percentage of it the following season. So if you're also Adam Peters, why would you spend all the way up to the cap when you know you're going to need more pieces next year, or just have that flexibility down the line? And I'm not one to say save the cap space just to save it here. But once again, it's realistic to look at this roster and go, they need quite a bit. Maybe the home run isn't there this offseason. It's not, by the way. If it's not Myles Garrett, it's nobody, honestly. And so
maybe it's a receiver. That there's a possibility that there's a big receiver, Higgins, Godwin, where they spend some real money for somebody.
Okay, but at the same time, it's still not like they're not paying either of those guys the most money in the league for their contract, right? So that's what I'm getting at here is, yes, there might be significant money, but we're not talking top 5 money. Maybe Higgins gets that because of the contract, but like I don't.
If Higgins hit the open market, he's going to get a deal like Ayuk got a year ago, which is going to be among the top 10 to top 5. And then we can have this argument whether you think he's worth that. Like, we can all agree he's really, really, really good, but is he Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson? In my opinion, no. But then again, on a team like this with a quarterback like this, maybe he is.
You also, I mean, the argument for that one, too, is going to be the NFL has already said the cap's going to be going up, up, up. So, like, you are just kind of paying for someone that you don't have to trade for. So there's a bunch of arguments there. But what I am getting at here is that player, besides really Higgins, doesn't exist this offseason. So you're just going to spend is, I guess, what some people want them to do. And I think that's very Dan Snyder-ish if they just want to spend at this point.
So, like, and then, okay, so now that we have this quarterback who is not just really good, but special, I really think the decision, I think for Peters and thinking about, and it's not right now, is what unit do we want to build up? Because that's really the choice that they have at this point. And I could argue either way. Could you go, all right, let's go get T. Higgins. Let's go draft some stud running back because we can. And let's spend some money on the offensive line. And let's try to make this offense so freaking good that, like, if the defense is average to above average, we're just going to outscore people. We're in an offensive league. Or you could go the other direction and go, you know what? What do we have right now on this team that we think's pretty good? Assuming Chin's back, we like our safeties. Bring Wagner back in Luvu and a young Jordan McGee. We like our linebackers. Yeah, we need another corner, but we think Sanderson's a stud, and we believe that Lattimore is going to be something close to the guy that we traded for before he got hurt. So we have a top-tier corner, Sanderson. Yeah, we need another corner, but, like, we're not far off from having a really good back end. We're going to move John, but we like Johnny Newton. We think we can get more out of Daron Payne. We think Armstrong is good enough. We're a Myles Garrett away from having what looks like a really, really good defense. So this is a question. And again, I think it's too premature to have it because I still think the roster isn't quite where it should be to do either one of these things. But I do think we're a year away if we have a really good draft and a nice free agency period where they fill the holes again, where they get professionals in some spots and they are really competitive with these professionals, which is what I think is going to end up happening, where next year they go, okay, what do we want to build up? Our offense or our defense? Do we feel like Jaden elevates all these other people around us so much that we can rely on him to do that? Let's give him a top 10 defense and see what happens. Or let's go get a couple more weapons, a couple high-priced guard tackles, and let's see if we have the best offense in the league. And that'll be a question I think they need to answer probably next year. Because to your point, and I agree with this, I think we're just a year off of this. If this was happening next year, I think this is a no-brainer, assuming they have a really good offseason, filling the holes, having another nice draft class to go, you know what? Let's take a chance. Let's go pay for this guy. Let's bring him in here because he is a massive difference maker, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think we kind of started hitting it yesterday where the talent from this draft, I think the Schefter quote was picks 10 through 35 are the same level of talent. So if you trade down, grab more picks, that's perfect roster filling. Like, you don't need these studs, but you do need to fill out the roster.
I think they're willing to move on from John because they know the defensive tackle position in the draft is so wildly deep that they're going to get one either late in the first round or in the second round.
Yep.
And they feel like they're going to get a young, maybe it's not him, but they feel like they're in a position where they could save a lot of money, get younger at the position. And the talent pool is actually very deep at that position this year. They're thinking through this.
To your point, too, of like building up the offense or the defense, let's rewind it real quick. They lost 5 games last year, right? The Tampa one, I'll throw out week 1. They were getting all sorted, right? So I don't think I can really draw too much from them. But you look at the Steelers, it was a 1-possession game. You look at the Ravens, they played really ugly, 1-possession game. The Eagles game, they were winning in the fourth quarter, but we all knew that
didn't even been in that game. I mean, that was the quick turnaround. They needed a bye. Jaden was still hurt. They were beat up, and they were in it till the fourth quarter until it kind of the bow broke on them.
Correct. And even in that one, I'm actually not really willing to put much into it because I just put that on the Eagles too. What did I joke about all season long? Oh, wait, we're in a close game. Hand it to Saquon. That's exactly what they did. So I don't even want to like put too much stock in that one. They lost a high scoring one to the Cowboys, right, at home. Yeah. And what am I missing? I'm missing one other loss.
The Cowboys one is the one that I think was the one game all year that got away from them.
Yeah, and I can't.
The one time where I walked out going, boy, they were outclassed here. Like, it was like the only one of the whole. But listen, that happens here and there. But it was the only one where I looked back and I went, wait a minute. Because that was Cooper Rush was playing. Dallas wasn't playing well at that point in time. They actually got better as the season progressed, but they weren't playing well at the time. That's the one of all of them that got away. I'm with you. The Tampa one was the opener. That was a bad draw, right? First game, rookie quarterback on the road, playoff team, whatever. They lost. Who cares? The Dallas one got away from them. The Pittsburgh one could have gone either way.
Correct.
The first Philly one surprisingly could have gone either way, but I didn't think much of it when they lost. I was like, whatever. And the Baltimore one, they were outclassed. That score was closer than the game really was. Right.
Well, right. But what I'll say though is it was still one possession. So that's Tampa, that's Ravens, that's Steelers, that's Cowboys, that's Eagles. You look at 3 of those games.
4 of those 5 were playoff teams too. Eventually were playoff teams.
Right. Playoff teams. And though they had chances to win the game at the end in those ones. So to me, like my immediate thought is upgrade the defense. If they get one possession, stopped at a couple of those games, we might be talking about 14 wins last year. It's the NFL. I get it. It went both ways last year, right? Like they had a Hail Mary. They had some last second victories. The last second win against the Eagles. They turned some losses into wins. But what I'm getting at is I think you beef up the defense here because Jaden's going to give you what Jaden's going to give you. Like that's a gimme at this point when you look at what he was working with on offense. So I'm more inclined to beef up the defense in the immediate future right now than I am the offense.
I am too, with one exception where I would spend some money or spend some capital is on the offensive line. Like,
of course.
I'm on you protect this guy at all costs. And you tell him, we want you to elevate. guys, and we think you can. Like, we just saw it in year one with that group of skill position players. You elevated them to a top 10 to top 5 at periods of time offense, but we were going to help you. We're going to give you a better offensive line.
Right.
I would spend some money there and then go look like are they going to end up picking a running back relatively early? Maybe, because the value is there. Like, all of a sudden you get Travion Henderson in here because he was a second round pick. It's a massive upgrade at talent at the position cheaply. Like, could they spend some draft capital in the next year or two on a young wide receiver with a second round pick who all of a sudden has the 4.4 speed, has the height or whatever, and all of a sudden you're going, throw him in there with McLaurin and whoever else we have. In the meantime, I do expect them to get a couple of professional wide receivers out there. But there's a part of me that goes, if you're really going to spend outside of finding, let's protect this guy, it is on the defensive side of the ball. It's just that maybe we're about a year too soon for all of it, which does go back to, and I was talking about this earlier this week, this real full turnaround is not going to happen overnight. It really isn't. The roster is not in a spot to do this, but I do think directionally, they're going to have to make a choice, whether it's all in offense or all in defense. And, tell Jaden, like, hey man, like, either way, the expectations are ramped up on you. We give you all these toys to play with. We're going to end up with, we hope, a top 3 offense. We don't. We're basically saying, hey, we want you to elevate people and we want to be really good, but we're not going to make you have to win every game by yourself. The defense is going to hold up its end of the bargain. And I don't know which way that's going to go yet. I think the makings of it are really actually on defense. It's kind of there. Luvu's going to be here for a couple more years. So is Dorrance Armstrong. We'll see with Deron Payne. Johnny Newton's going to be here for a while. Sanders still's a stud. Quan's young. Chin's going to get re-signed. Like, it's all actually kind of there, that's sitting there to go, all right, let's go get a stud here, stud there. Let's ramp that up. But I think we're 12 months away from it.
This is also why I hope they're on the phone. If, no one's calling for Allen, you call some of those other teams about their players, because you can use one of your players to upgrade, whether they get the linebacker in Tennessee or they get one of the wide receivers from San Fran or LA, like, whether they get one of those guys. This is why I think a player for player trade would actually benefit this team so much, because then you upgrade one of those positions that we're talking about that they need. And to your point, and my point about the defense too, it's cheaper to upgrade the defense as well. You don't have to pay what they need as much. They need more.
Not
pieces.
If you're trying to get Myles Garrett.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, straight up free agency though. Like I'm not talking about Myles Garrett, but I'm talking about if they needed to add one more.
Well, it happened last year. I mean, Luvu is a deal. Like, if you look at it now, Luvu was a massive upgrade for them. He was a deal.
Correct. So, like, I think if you're going to upgrade that side of the ball and you need to fill out the roster, like, this is where I think we both keep going back to, is you need to fill out the roster and upgrade. I think it's easier to do on defense, at least in free agency. On offense, I'm with you. I think you take the best running back that you got on the board in the second or the third round, or if you like a wide receiver with that first round pick, or in the second round too. Take them. Like, if you want to have cheap talent on the offense, I have faith Jaden's going to elevate them. Whereas on defense, I'd go with the steady hand, I guess, is what I'm settling.
100%. I think, like, if all of a sudden let's just say trade back from 29, which I would advocate they do. Like, get back in the second round, get an extra second round pick. You're not so worried about those 5th-year option, not so much for whoever's there. Your guy might be there a few picks back because someone values it, wants to move up. Okay. And you pick up an extra second, third round pick for this. Like, what if Matthew Golden from Texas is just sitting there? Like, all of a sudden you just got like a really, really good receiver. Travion Henderson, the more I watch him, I'm like, this guy would be great in our offense. Like, just, he would be terrific. Okay, well, he's probably a second round pick. Like, he's probably just sitting there. Then all of a sudden you're picking up all this talent on that side of the ball without paying for it. And let's see what it looks like on the other side. With that, therein lies I think we got to pay for some of these guys. But you're going to have to make a choice, and we'll see which way it goes. The other thing that is happening is Osa Odighizuwa looks like he's going nowhere. That Dallas looks like they're going to pay the price to keep him, which is $20+ million. And listen, I think he's a very good young player. I thought he was a very effective young player. But this is one of those, if that's what the price point is, good luck to you, sir. Congratulations. See you a couple times next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not surprised at this one too. Like, this was one of the names too. Like, we see this once free agents are starting to come up, you're like, huh, they haven't signed that guy yet. And then everyone starts putting their spotlight on him. Like, oh, he's about to get paid. I'm not surprised that Dallas stepped up and that they're going to give him this extension. It's one of those ones where once we saw what the free agent class looked like, guys like this are going to get locked up.
Yeah, I think so. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Who's going to be the first domino? Because there's a lot of people out there that are on the trade market. Free agency starts in about less than 2 weeks now. Combine's essentially over. So all the GMs were together all of a sudden. Who's it going to be? Diana Rossini is reporting this morning that Matthew Stafford is meeting with the Rams brass today, and that the Raiders and Giants have both come forward with monetary contract offers for Stafford on short-term deals, like 2-year deals for like $100 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's the reporting. So that would, I think, satisfy what he was looking for contractually. This will now go back to, did the Rams scare him enough that he just wants to stay with them because he can win with them? Or does he want to cash in at the number that he wants and go to a place like Vegas where, I don't know what I don't know with Pete Carroll now, the coach. I think that could be a very different situation next year. And I don't like the Chargers with Harbaugh. You don't know. I mean, it's a very, very good coach. You don't know. Or go to the Giants where you can get the money that you want. But let's be real for a minute. I mean, the GM and the coach are dead men walking, and you have to save them. And I wouldn't love what's going on there just in general with their roster and just the juju of the whole thing. And then to walk into the division with Philadelphia and Washington, like, you got to be kidding. If you actually really want to go there and think like outside of the money, that's a really good spot to try to win in the here and now. You're moving into the division with, by far not close, the best team in football, just won the Super Bowl with a bad roster. Good luck with that, sir. And if you guys go, even with you 7-10, they're getting fired. So I think this whole thing to me was they're trying to scare him into going, you really want to go there? Or do you want to take just a little bit less to stay here with us?
I mean, to your point there, your last point, the other one is Mahomes, Broncos, and Chargers. So, like, actually might be arguably harder than this division too.
This is my whole point about this. I think they were scaring him. Like, you want that money? Fine. Here's where you have to go to get it.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing too. Like, did you see the report about him and Brady at the ski resort? Did you see this? Okay. One, you don't just randomly run into each other at a ski resort in Vermont or wherever they were at.
Montana.
Montana.
And that's where Brady has like a lot of these rich people have these houses up in these resorts in that area in Montana, whatever. One day I aspire to join them.
I'm sorry. Those two don't just run into each other.
No,
there.
Of course not.
That was full NBA. Like, they're talking behind the scenes. So I'm inclined to believe the Raiders more than I am the Giants here. You're right, though. Like, overall, I think it starts here, whether it's him re-signing with the Rams or he gets moved. This is the domino. I think this has to be, I wouldn't even call it a domino. I'd call it the linchpin. Like, I think this is the one that gets pulled and then everything else falls into place, whether that's Cousins, whether that's Rodgers, whether that's Purdy's extension. Like, I think everything starts to fall into place once he is settled out, essentially, whether it's with LA or with the Raiders or with the Giants. Or there's one team that no one's talking about that I think is dumb that they're not going all in, is Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh's never bad enough to get a franchise quarterback. They have a ready-made team ready to go. Tomlin likes veteran quarterbacks like Stafford. I don't think he wants to deal with Rodgers. That's one team that I would say, go all in. You guys are always knocking on the door, but you haven't had a quarterback since Big Ben. So that's one that I would throw out there as well.
I actually, like, offensively don't love their roster. Defensively, they have a lot of really good players. Najee Harris is a free agent, so I don't know if he'll be back. I think he's a good running back, not a great one.
Yeah.
He'll probably get some money somewhere else. They'll probably leave. Warren is a very good number 2. Maybe he's a number 1. I don't know. Their offensive line, they've spent some, draft picks on it. I think it's pretty good, not great. Pickens is terrific, but he's mercurial, like a lot of very talented receivers. Outside of that, like, they've had a lot of guys shuffle through that seem very talented, but some of them aren't sticking really right now. I actually don't love their roster offensively. Defensively, they're terrific with the players that they have. Some of them are getting a little long in the tooth now, though.
Sure.
I mean, we're getting some older players now, but they always seem to figure out how to reload. I think there's a bigger story there that they keep overlooking because they just blame Tomlin and say he can't get over the top. And I would look back at them and go, do you actually really like your roster more than Baltimore's, Cleveland's, if you're being honest? Like, if you're being really honest, outside of the what show at quarterback that's going on there, do you actually really like your roster better than theirs? Because be honest about it. Or Cincinnati's, as of a couple years ago, that looked dominant and now seems to be whittling off. Like, I'm not sure that I love their roster all that much. And like, Tomlin's the one who keeps getting hit over the head with it. And I'm sitting there going, you gotta have good players to win. They haven't had a good quarterback situation since Ben retired. They hung on too long with Ben because they didn't have a succession plan with him. They haven't had an answer at that position, which is always the biggest problem. If you're going to be in a division with Burrow and Jackson, good luck beating them if that's what it is. And then I look across the board and I go, it's not bad, but it's not great. It's not,
right.
So, like, if we're going to be blunt about it.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, either way, what I'm getting at here is Stafford is still the first one to move here because he is, when you look at it, he is the best quarterback on the market. Like, whether it's free agency or a trade, he's the best one available. Everyone else is going to fall in line. So everyone that's in the market for a new quarterback, they're going after him first. Then everyone else is going to settle in. You also have the second tier of players too, of like, does someone go after Russ? Does that, come through somewhere? Does someone go after Justin Fields? Like, there's a couple other names too that I think are interesting, but they are so much further down the list than Stafford is in terms of talent. Yeah,
Pittsburgh, I can't figure out a quarterback because they haven't signed Russ or Fields. So if they were really committed to either one of them, that would have happened by now because they just would have taken that thing off the table. They seem to be looking at both of them, and more likely Justin, to be like, you're our fail-safe, but I'd be pissed if I were him at this point and go, if you don't really want me here and you're just going to sign me because you can't get anybody else, I may look elsewhere too. That's how I would feel about it if I were him. With Stafford, like, I think the Giants are going to offer him the most money. That's what I think is going to happen. And I actually think they're going to offer the best deal to the Rams. I think it's going to come down to, do you really want to go there? And then Stafford's going to have to make that choice. If I were to guess right now, if he does accept a trade, it will be to Vegas. One, it's closer to where he lives right now. Two, the pressure isn't as high. Like, if they don't win, people aren't going to freak out on him. He's not going to have to deal with the Vegas media. Like, it's not going to be anything like that. There's going to be lowered expectations because they're in a division with Mahomes. Like, they're not going to be expected to win anyway. Like, if he's going to do the cash out thing, I think it's Vegas, personally. And if he just gets back and he goes, you know what? Deep down, I'm actually really a competitor. And McVay goes, don't take 45 million, take 37 because it helps us. That was our breaking point, or whatever the breaking point was. Maybe we'll give you, how about we give you we spread it out and give you a third year or something like that. Then just do that. So I'm going 50-50. He just gets convinced to stay at the rate he doesn't love, or he cashes out with the Raiders. I don't think he's really going to the Giants, even though if I'm the Rams, I bet it's the best deal on the table.
I would say this too. If he goes to the Raiders or the Giants, he does have an elite pass catcher on each one, right? He's going to have Bowers in Vegas. He's going to have Neighbors in New York. Yeah. But this is always the caveat when you're a quarterback and you're trying to get a trade. Well, they're about to trade a bunch of assets, right? So they would have to also not only trade and sign you, then have to upgrade elsewhere. Those are always very risky things to do, because if the deals don't work out, all of a sudden you're cash strapped. And then those 2 years could be disastrous too. I think he has to weigh that too, because then you go back to LA, they've got a pair of good wide receivers. They have a solid running back. Their offense is solid all across the board. How much do you want to risk here? And if it is a cash in, okay, fine. Just know that when you're going to get traded for, those assets get flipped for you. It's hard to upgrade the roster when that happens too.
Yes. So we'll see. And then let's see over the next week, does Cooper Kupp actually get traded, or Deebo Samuel actually get traded? If either one of them actually get traded, then I think the first domino will then start the ball rolling. There's been a lot of, we'll trade you. And everyone goes, let's just see if they cut them. Well, someone may jump that line, and someone may actually pull something like this off. And once that happens, then it all goes to you know what. And then we'll see what happens with T. Higgins. because if Jamar Chase is going to get a massive contract, I do not believe the Bengals are going to pay Higgins. Therefore, I think they'll move him and he'll get what he wants. And let's see who steps up and does that. So I think this is all about to happen starting next week. Meantime, you mentioned this because I can't believe people care about this as much as they do. But apparently, Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz, who are obviously, one is a major NFL insider, and the other one is an NFL insider who doesn't have major bandwidth the way that Rappaport does. I guess over the Stafford meeting in Montana, Rappaport was kind of, and I think this is fair, covering for the agents because he may have met with Brady before the Rams ever really allowed him to have the trade. Like, that's all it was. Like, they clearly met. They're trying to pretend now it was an accidental meeting in a ski resort in Montana, which is so stupid to even, like, it just defies belief. But the Rams don't seem all that upset about it and aren't screaming tampering, and then came out and said, we're allowing him to seek a trade to try to get in front of, we're not going to go yell at Tom Brady and the Raiders for obviously doing something you're not supposed to do. Of course, Brady himself has experience with this. Remember, he's the one that went to the Dolphins boat. Remember, Brian Flores wouldn't get on the boat with him because that was going to be tampering. So, like, we all know that this is real. There's an NBA version of this where you're not supposed to meet with these people, but will anybody know if we do it in a Montana ski resort? Well, people found out, and Jordan Schultz tweeted something to the effect of, to Ian Rappaport's thing that was like, if you actually believe that was an accident, you're an idiot, and like, so like, and whatever, like, who cares? Like, this is shots fired in the media sphere. Who gives a crap? Apparently, Schultz went up to Rappaport at a Starbucks in Indianapolis and started screaming at him about this. And Rappaport, is what it sounds like, tried to totally ignore him. And then next thing you know, they're face to face and nearly had a fight. And NFL security had to call the cops into the Starbucks to break it up. And like, to me, that's just a funny story that got so much national appeal. The inside the NBA guys let alone the combine coverage, the inside the NBA guys were talking about it. So we are either collectively bored, or I just don't get why this was such a national story, but it was.
Well, I mean, you also even saw Schefter trolling. Like, he took a picture of the Starbucks sign and was like, head on a swivel. Like, because that was what happened. Yeah, I kind of can't believe this got legs. I think this, though, is a result of there just hasn't been a ton of things coming out from the combine this week. So it gets blown up because there hasn't been a bunch of news. Like,
this tells you how bad this draft is. I've been talking about this for a while. There isn't a lot of high-end talent coming out. So there's just not a lot of storylines to talk about from the combine.
My favorite thing that happened yesterday, though, was Rappaport. He still goes on with McAfee, not as much because they use Schefter, but he goes on with McAfee, and they're of course ball busting him. Like, hey, what happened in the Starbucks, man? What was the order that pissed him off or whatever? And they're just like doing it. And one of McAfee's hosts go, all right, so what's next? Like, you going to do a handshake or something? And Rappaport's like, no, I'm good. And they're like, whoa, no handshake. I'm like, I can't believe this is a storyline heading into the weekend of the combine. It's so ridiculous.
It is. Yeah. And and then Jordan Schultz is the son of Howard Schultz, Starbucks founder.
Yep.
So the fact that it happened at a Starbucks, and then of course, like, anytime he does anything, he gets involved, everyone's just screaming, well, you're only here because your daddy bought a lot of coffee for, some GM or some agent a long time ago, whatever it is. So anyway, it's funny too, to just think, like, the media fights are funny because these are not, the largest people on earth. And Ian Rappaport, like, no offense, but he like comes up to here on me. Like, he's like I'm not a big dude, and he's really not a big dude.
Schefter too.
The idea of him going face to face with somebody, this feels like one of those barstool, like, find the fans and make them fight each other.
Rough and rowdy, a little rough and rowdy action.
Yes. That had the feel of that. I do wish they fought though, because I think it would have been better than they just yelled at each other for 5 minutes in a Starbucks.
I bet you Portnoy sent him offers. He had to. That's his job.
I'm sure he did.
That's his job.
Yes, I'm sure he did. One other quick thing, because this goes back to like old school Bruce Allen days. We haven't had a lot of those. John Gruden is back in the Bucs Ring of Fame. The reason why he was taken out of it, because obviously he was a Super Bowl winning coach there. The reason why he was taken out of it was the emails that set off the start of the investigation a second time. Like, this is so full circle. So like, John Gruden's emails, which were not great, that were revealed, with him saying clearly out of line things. If you want to go so far as to call them racist, you be you, but they were way out of line, but they got revealed, and they were revealed, most people think, because Dan Snyder had them revealed, which then started the ball rolling of starting the investigations back into the Washington football team Redskins. I can't remember what they were at the time, but that's actually what started the ball rolling. And here we are in 2025, playa, where Gruden gets his good name back to a degree where they're willing to put him back into the Bucs Ring of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, Gruden, he's also been back in the spotlight too. Like, he's been with Barstool. I think they signed him last season. And so he's been back in the public eye. And look, if there's anything John Gruden does, I'm not here to like shuffle those emails under the rug, because what he said was ridiculous in some of them. What he does best, though, is this, and you know this as well, is be in front of a camera and talk about football.
Yes.
So what happened? Barstool signs him. He's a guest on the shows. He's doing those watch parties, watching games and stuff. He's telling the stories. No one tells stories like him, too.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised he's kind of slowly but surely built his reputation back up, because he is literally undefeated when you put him in front of a camera and he's talking about football. I'm not surprised he put his reputation back up in the last couple of years.
He's got a delivery that's he's got that unusual delivery.
Yeah.
So he's very, very good at it. Anyway, all right, we'll be right back. Pretty much a choice be at 6:30 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. The big story with the new RFK was this story that came out yesterday, that there possibly will be, I'm not going to go no tailgating, but it'll be limited, because if the stadium were to go back to the RFK site, we've talked about this a lot, it's really not that big of a plot of land, especially if you have to earmark a certain percentage of it for parks and other things that seem to be in the legislation to allow them to do this in the first place. You put up the stadium, you need to have a requisite amount of parking. Muriel Bowser is telling constituents that will be the case. However, to make that the case, it likely will be more garages than you're typically used to seeing at a stadium, not unlike with what the Nats have, because there's a limited amount of parking around that area, so they put up some big garages. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the direction they go, but if there's a bunch of garages, well, they're not going to let a lot of people put a bunch of grills in there and blow the thing up. So the tailgating is going to be limited. There will be some kind of workaround. And my guess is game day tailgates are going to take place at the wharf and all the way down the river and all these different places where people could walk or easily metro ride up or all that type of stuff. So people will tailgate. It's not like they won't. It just won't be the traditional in the parking lot. And that got some people's feathers ruffled. But relax, everybody. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I no joke, killed 40 minutes of this on my show yesterday, because I do go to games. I do tailgate. I'm a season ticket holder. So I felt actually way more qualified to talk about this than most of the other hosts in the city. And I eventually settled in on this. If there's one thing this city knows how to do, the people that live here, it's how to party and watch their football team. And so, yes, will there be a growing period in the first couple years of how this is going to happen? Yes, but it's going to settle in somehow, some way. I also said, look at some of the best destinations in the NFL in their tailgate scenes. Let's look at Vegas. I know that's a unique situation, but there's no tailgating in Vegas.
Correct.
Let's go to New Orleans. That's got Bourbon Street, so a little bit more unique, but they have a courtyard where you can go and drink and eat before you actually head into the stadium. Let's go to LA, where there's really not, tailgating is not really allowed in LA, but same thing. There's a courtyard. There's things to do around the stadium. You're fine there. The one that I circled that I think that they're going to have to try to get the vibe right is Atlanta. There's not really a lot of tailgating in Atlanta, but there are certain little areas that you can go eat, drink, whatever. All I'm saying here is this city knows how to do it. You're also going to see what happens with Nats Park that happens down there. New restaurants are going to open up. Correct. New bars are going to open up. New activations are going to open up, because if I know one thing about the city too, everyone loves making money. And you know how you do that? You figure out what people want, and that's what they want to drink, what they want to eat. And let's be honest here too. Josh Harris is going to help do this as well. There's going to be stuff at the stadium. Hopefully he's not price gouging, but this new ownership also understands too, they'll be competing with whatever else is around the stadium.
Yes, I think the businesses down at the wharf will be like, this could be amazing, because those Sunday home games, people are going to be showing up at their establishments at 8 a.m., 8, 9 a.m., especially for a 1 o'clock game. And they're going to have these giant tailgate parties because it's easy to get up to the stadium from there. So tailgating will happen. But in the traditional form, probably not. And I've been waiting for teams to try to get a hold, because there's so much money in that they just allow people to do it, that they haven't figured out a way to kind of corporate take that over and make it a thing. Like, you have to attend their tailgates. Like, I'm surprised that's never happened before.
There's one thing here too, that if I'm the team, I'm trying to figure out right now, take advantage of being on the river, right? I think that's something that hasn't been taken advantage of. Like, get some of that boat traffic. Like, you're talking about the wharf. I think that's perfect. Have a shuttle, that goes from the wharf to the stadium, whether that's on water or on land, whatever. There's ways to do this. And I hope that they just listen to everything, because there's going to be some growing pains when it happens. But at the same time, this is just part of moving into the city. And I'll just leave this what I settled on yesterday. If this team is still winning at the clip that they're winning at when they're moving into RFK, I don't care about tailgating at that point. I care about winning football, and it's something I'll just figure out on the way. It's not a big deal to me.
Those of you who drink out of your trunk, you can do that in a garage or an open parking lot, either way.
Right.
All right. Last thing for just a quick minute. The unexpected valley of the Capitals, which 4 nations break. None of the players are selected. They show up, score 15 goals in 2 games, look like, oh my God, they're going to win the Stanley Cup without losing a playoff game, turn around and have all these home games. They play Calgary, who's kind of barely in it, and St. Louis, who currently isn't in it, and they look bad in both. So what's up?
Both of these games, they played their backup goaltenders too. That's what actually puts my red flag up here, that you had 2 teams that are playing desperate, but they played their backup goaltenders.
In fairness, I think that Calgary guy's pretty good, but go on.
Right there. But the guy who didn't play was better. What I'm getting at here, though, with both of these guys or both of these teams is Spencer Carberry, I think, hit it on the head. And as you know, like, he's probably going to win Coach of the Year. And I think he's been right with a lot of what he said. He basically said, we're now at the time of the year where you can't just show up and be the better team. You have to match some of these teams' desperation. And to your point, both Calgary and St. Louis, outside looking in, trade deadline is, 2 weeks away, that both of those teams are saying we need to win right now for our management to go buy at the deadline, not sell at the deadline. The Caps were met with 2 very desperate teams this week. They did not rise up to the occasion. My concern level is like a 5 out of 10 right now, but it's more than it's been all season long. They hadn't lost back-to-back regulation games in a long time at home. They have now. So I'll say this. Saturday is a game against Tampa. I expect them to step up. Tampa's a team that they usually get excited to play against. They're a talented team. I think they bounce back, but having 2 losses against these teams on your longest homestand of the season, color me concerned a little bit here. And off of the break, like, that's what I don't really understand here. You came out gangbusters off the weekend, and then you didn't keep it going against these 2 teams. I don't really know what gives at this point.
Yeah, it was weird. I thought both games were odd. I thought they started way too slow against Calgary. And they started slow, but they had a bad 2-minute stretch in the late part of the second period last night where they just got down by 2. It just kind of bang, bang. And all of a sudden they were down 2, and then they couldn't overcome it. So we'll see. Early puck drop tomorrow too. Weird, 12:30. So let's see how they react tomorrow. All right, everybody. Talk to you on Monday. Bram watch the show. ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.